Alright, so in my ever-continuing challenge to constantly update the Zoo Primer, I am going to record some videos of playbacks. I'd rather do live matches, but with DragonCon coming up and everything, I don't really have time to do live matches. The only thing I've got time to do is play in my spare time, and if I run into a good match where I feel like this is a good example of how Zoo should play against a certain type of deck, then I will re-record the playthrough explaining what I did and why I did it, and also, while the boring parts are happening, explain what is the matchup itself. I, again, wish could do it in live time, but I don't have that kind of luxury right now. So this is the deck I'm running. I'm not going to talk about it very much. It's the Collected Company Zoo deck. There's no real reason to dive deep into it. If you want to know more about the different versions of Zoo, just go to the Zoo thread at the MTG Salvation and the Modern subforum. Google MTG Salvation Modern Zoo, and you'll find it. Alright, enough of that. This is the deck. Cool. If you want to look at it more, freeze it here. I'm not going to wait around. Let's go right to the actual match and hit play. So, the matchup I can see pretty quickly here, if we go with an Elfish Mystic, aside from it could have been some random standard deck, is very clearly going to be Elf. I mean, Elvish Mystic Elf. It's just that's how it rolls. With that in mind, I know what I need to do here. I know I need to start trying to out-aggro him. I've got really nothing in my hand that kills stuff with Elves, which is a problem, because Elves is sort of an aggro combo deck. They very synergize to each other with either to a beatdown plan or some kind of big mana. Now, the big mana is either going to be like an Emrakul, a Crater Hoof Behemoth, or something along those lines that'll kick my ass. So with this hand, my only option really is to rush. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to cast my Noble Hierarch and rush as fast as I can. Here's where I see something a little bit new. He's got an Evolutionary Leap. This is a new card that just recently came out. Maybe not by the time you see this video, but there's a lot of Elf decks running it, trying to see if it's good or not. They're using Collected Company, I think, too. Regardless, it's just an engine for Elves, just like Collected Company would be, or Glimpse of Nature, which is banned in Modern. But stuff like that to just continually spew out Elves off the top of their library to try to either get that beatdown plan or to try to get that big mana spell. Here, I've got nothing I can do. I got a Collected Company that I drew, which I knew might help me get to a Qasali Pride Mage to nullify this in a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and cast my Luxodon Smiter. He's going to start doing his thing a little bit. He's going to be just doing a lot of Evolutionary Leaping, trying to find the correct hand setup for his combo. Elves have a combo, and this is the first part of that combo. It's called Heritage Druid, and the other part is Nestle something or other. It'll come up in this match specifically, so you'll see it. But Heritage Druid allows you to tap 3 Elves and make 3 mana. Now, once you do tap 3 Elves and you have a way to constantly draw every time you play an Elf, you'll constantly have enough Elves out here for you to use this ability to just continuously put out 3 mana, use it, 3 mana, use it, 3 mana, use it, and once you have enough Heritage Druids or the Nestle Warriors, whatever they're called, you can then start chaining up in mana, and you'll see that come to fruition. So I'm just going to go ahead and just attack straight here. The reason why I end up not playing anything specifically is because I want to be able to... Let's see here. The reason why I wanted to do this is so that specifically I was hoping he was going to attack into me and I could remove some of his stuff by throwing in a Collected Company and blocking. That's a very unlikely thing because it's like a very obvious gimmick and he doesn't fall for it. So he goes ahead and puts down another Evolutionary Leap. That's something that I'm going to have to deal with. The fact that I'm just never really going to deal with that an Evolutionary Leap, even if I get a Qasali Pride Mage. But the Cloudstone Kuro is another addition to an Elf combo that you commonly see. It's a dangerous card, so if you see it, you want to get rid of it if you can. And what it does is whenever a non-artifact permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you can toss a permanent that controls that same permanent type, so creature, would bounce a creature in this case, and toss that back into your hand. The reason why you would want to do this is you would want to toss in things like Elvish Visionary is a great example, because Elvish Visionary will go back in your hand. You can recast it with the mana that you're just now infinitely getting, and it'll allow you to 1-for-1 infinite draw. It's a long way to do it. And you're gonna see this guy's like his time tick down as he does it. So I didn't hit the Pride Mage like I was hoping to. I hit some beef. I would have, if I hit another Knight, I think I probably could have won this game, but instead I hit a Mana Dork, and that happens sometimes. And I end up attacking like this for the damage. I know I want to play the Scavenging Ooze here. I didn't know if I wanted to play the Noble Hierarch and the Voice out of my hand. Maybe I should bluff and say I've got something else in my hand, but I've got a land there, so I can bluff to do that if I need to. On the flip end, I also feel like this is the better play, because if I do a Voice and then he puts out a couple creatures, like he goes up to from 3 creatures to like, I don't know, 8 creatures to block, then this is going to do a lot to put pressure on him, to force him to block, or else he'll die. And then he'll also have to trade, and at worst, the next turn I have, he'll be back to 2 or 3 creatures alive, and that's it. And his deck will be thinned down a little bit more. So I opt to go for that instead of just leaving up mana to heal myself. Now, I don't think in the end of this game, an Emrakul, spoilers, attacks me and I die. In the end, I've got no choice to do that life gain. I'll go up to 17, 18, but an Emrakul Resolved is going to kill me regardless, and he had a bunch of Elves at this point. I never untap past these creatures. He's just going to take 10 minutes to do his turn now. He Weird Harvests, and he finds the perfect cards that he needs to finish off this combo, which are those Nestle Druids, or whatever they're called. And I get Qasali Pride Mage. My reasoning for getting Qasali Pride is to try to kill him off of this if he fails. Now, that's my main reasoning for getting Qasali Pride Mage with the Weird Harvest. Weird Harvest is a powerful card, allowing you to grab like a crap ton of cards. Nestle Sentinel. What would a zoo video be without me commonly fucking up mispronouncing names? But as you see, what's going to happen here, he's going to tap them for mana, and then as they tap to put something else into play, they'll untap themselves because of it, allowing him to now get infinite mana. So because of this, he's going to put some kind of big mana spell out here, and I'm just never going to do it. The Cloudstone Kuro is not a necessary part of the combo, but it's helping him here because it's bouncing, like I said, this Elfish Visionary back to his hand, keeping his hand constantly stacked with cards that'll never die out. I'm just going to go ahead and let this video play. I'm not even going to talk. Go ahead and watch it. It's just a crap ton of stuff that's happening, but you can pause the video at any point in time to understand what's happening. I'll try to point out some stuff if I see it. I'm not a huge combo guy. The Estus Warrens, he gets rid of it a lot quicker than I would do it. I would do it to gain a bunch of life because there's trample effects that could come out with Knight of the Reliquary and kind of win. But he's just clearly digging to get himself some Emrakul action. When he gets to the point where he doesn't have any more creatures in his hand, he drew lands or something, he can go ahead and Evolutionary Leap and sacrifice a couple cards to get hit to restock on creatures that'll allow him to continue his combo. And that's what he does every time that he has that fault happen. Regal Force is an old school Elves card. It's not so much used anymore, although it's used in Legacy Elves. And what it does is it allows you to draw a card for every single creature you control currently, which in Elves is, fuck ton. And he's just going to keep going until he gets that Emrakul, really. Now he's got the ability to just do what he needs to do. He's also slowing his roll a little bit with this guy. He doesn't want to draw too many and deck himself by accident. So he's just going to get there until he gets that one of Emrakul. But notice his time is just stupidly shrinking. He's at 12 minutes and 30 seconds. He was at 20 minutes earlier. That's something that happens on MTGO and you got to be aware of. He's going to untap and then just attack with his Emrakul. I can't do anything here, and really the reason why I do anything, like using mana and sacrificing and letting it go is because I'm just letting his time run down a little bit. In live matches as well as like matches for stakes, it's worth it's not, I don't want to say running out the clock because that makes me sound like an asshole, but it's worth letting them do their combo because A, I got to see every card that was in a lot of cards that was in his deck because of it, and B, because a deck like this, especially the version that uses Evolutionary Leap, takes forever to do. And if they choose a deck that takes forever, make them go through the motions. It's their it's their deck choice, you know. And if anything, you know, if they take so long to finish their games, and notice I did really nothing to draw out that game other than gain a life. And even then, I was thinking if maybe there was a possible way that I was thinking about my outs, and I just did that to shortcut my outs a little bit. And I realized there was no outs, and then I just basically sacrificed things and died. A draw is better than a loss, especially against a combo deck like this. You're not so great against combo. One of your only defenses is just to go like, all right, man, take charge of the reins. We'll see what happens. All right, that's game 1. Now let's do the game 2, shall we? Account. Go ahead. You guys can see how many games I concede because I played so much Belcher as a joke. All right, let's go ahead and play game 2. It's a very quick game, so I'm just going to quickly pause what's in my hand. I easily see I've got a Lightning Bolt and a Qasali Pride-Mage. Qasali Pride-Mage can take care of an Evolutionary Leap if I have to. That'll stop him from getting his card selection. Emphasis there, card selection, not card draw. But it will make sure that he doesn't get those cards that he needs to do his combo, and he's a little reliant on it in this deck. So it's a pretty good thing to have. Lightning Bolt will let me kill one of his dudes. I also know that if I have a Qasali Pride-Mage in the graveyard and I kill one of his dudes, that means I've got 2 dudes in the graveyard. So my Scavenging Ooze is pretty much going to be a 3/3, and my 2 Tarmogoyfs are going to be 4/5s because of the Qasali Pride-Mage. I'm very much on a beatdown plane here, and I'm going to be using this Bolt and this Qasali Pride-Mage as sort of speed bumps to keep him from doing what he needs to do. So in a very weird way, I'm playing a tempo deck currently. I've recognized that this hand is a tempo hand against Elves. This is basically a counterspell to a Mana Dork, and this will be a counterspell to an engine card for their deck. In that weird way, I've got it backed with a pretty good clock with these 2 Tarmogoyfs, so I should be able to win. I recognize that, and I keep the hand. As you'll see, I end up just bolting that Elfish Mystic right away. I was considering holding it for another key card, but these decks play such little land count, and I think he actually misses on lands a couple times during this game. So I decided the best thing I can do is just use it right now, put my Tarmogoyf out there, and then I won't have to worry about the mana later. I can then put a turn 3 Qasali Pride-Mage to blow up an enchantment if that were to happen, as well as turn 4 Scavenging Ooze to eat stuff and try to swing for basically the win. So I figured it's the best way to do it. It's the best for my mana. It'll speed bump him, which is all I need. He ends up playing the Evolutionary Leap turn 2, which is, I'm like, fantastic. Probably because he thinks maybe that he can sneak out 3 elves on 1 turn, and then he'll probably have a chance to combo off with this Evolutionary Leap. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to, and note here, attack before I blow up the Qasali Pride-Mage. That'll allow me to get the Exalted Trigger on my Tarmogoyf, putting him into a 4/5, because there's 3 things in the graveyard. It's a 3/4 +1/1. And then I'm going to blow up before this, even, like, sometimes you let the Exalted Trigger resolve, specifically when you have, like, a 3/3 that might die to Bolt or something. Here I'm getting a little cocky because I know I don't have to, and I want to make sure I don't accidentally hit OK twice or something. I blow up the Evolutionary Leap in response to the Exalted Trigger. The Exalted Trigger will resolve. He'll get 3/4, and since this will be in the graveyard due to a static effect, it'll be 5 damage, and that'll, 4-turn clock him. Fantastic. So he ends up putting Essence Ward, and that's going to speed bump me a little bit. But seeing that he puts out an Essence Ward and a Spellskite, and he's only got 3 cards in hand, I know he's probably pretty light here and really going to need some powerful draws to get out of here. I end up drawing the Wild Noctowl. So I attack with the Tarmogoyf, knowing that if he blocks with his Spellskite, that's fine with me. I can bolt something if I draw into a bolt. But if he blocks with his Essence Warning, cool. I'm going to make sure I play my creatures main phase 2, so I can allow this thing to die so he won't gain life off of it. That's smart aggro play. And if he doesn't block either way, that's fine. I'll just take 4 damage. But playing the creature's main phase 2 here is a little bit mind play because what do I have in hand? Maybe it's a Gorg Clan Rampage or who knows? You know, crazy stuff. In the end, he decides to just take the damage. I'm going to go ahead and use my mana as efficiently as I can, and I'm going to go ahead and cast the Scavenging Ooze and the Tarmogoyf rather than, even though the Wild Noctowl is going to do more damage, because next turn, if I need to, depending on how blocks are, I can make this a 4/4, or I can make it a 1, you know, a 3/3 if it's not blocked. And that'll be equal to Wild Noctowl. I probably won't have anything to do with the mana anyways next turn. The also important thing to note is if he decides to block the Scavenging Ooze, I probably very much would have made it a 4/4 and killed that Skite, because even though I'd be taking 2 less damage, because I'd be taking 1 less damage on both Tarmogoyfs, next turn I would be doing 4 more damage because of it, because the Spellskite would be dead, putting an artifact in the graveyard, and that would be making my Tarmogoyfs 5/6s. So it's short term less damage. I wasn't going to kill him anyways, though. Long term more damage, and there's a Spellskite less to deal with, so if I draw a Lightning Bolt, I can automatically use it on a blocker and win the game. So that's my reasoning for doing that specifically, just to point out a little trick of the trade. He recognizes that he's not going to be able to win and just concedes here. Mostly because I've just got too much. He's going to have to block somewhere out, and he'll lose the game because of it. So, and he was also stuck on lands. So let's go ahead and go to Game 3. Game 3 was a little bit more interesting, but more or less came out the same. Let's go ahead and stop this. Stop. So I kept a hand that didn't have a Qasali Pride Mage, so imagine that's not there. I kept a hand that didn't have a Qasali Pride Mage in it, but it did have a Bonfire of the Damned and had a Lightning Bolt. And I recognized that with the Noble Hierarch's start, I could Bonfire of the Damned for 1. Now, Bonfire of the Damned for 1 is not very impressive, but if he, in his early terms, especially since this deck uses, Evolutionary Leap, it uses a little bit less like Azuri, Elves Lord effects, I know that I might be able to actually hit 3 creatures off this bonfire. And if I know if I can hit 3 creatures off this bonfire, the game is going to be pretty much 100% in my favor. Probably about 70% in my favor. He can recover. Those elves have good recoverability. But with the Lightning Bolt also in my hand, I could stop the recoverability. If he puts something down that could recover him, I can Lightning Bolt it right away, and then he will be back. Basically, two cards in hand at that point, and not very much to do. So I decided to go for the Noble Hierarch first, so that turn 2, if he decides to go use Llanowar Elves, put down a 1-mana creature, use 2 mana to put down more 1-mana creatures, I can just immediately Bonfire the Damned and set him back way far. Otherwise, if he doesn't, I could always put out Pride Mage and then just swing with the Noble Hierarch and do 2 damage, which he wouldn't be able to block with the 1/1 dudes. Or I could Lightning Bolt something key if I needed to. So I had options. The Collected Company, mind you, I probably should talk about what I sideboarded in against them so you can know what to do here. I'll talk about that at the end, but I did have some creatures that I sided in because of Collected Company. So the Collected Company wasn't the worst thing in the world to also play. Without further ado, let's just keep going and see what happens here. So I decided to play that Noble Hierarch so I can get that turn 2 Bonfire if I need to. He ends up going for an Arbor Elf and then immediately Spellskite. Now, Spellskite is going to be some problems here, especially since I'm a little bit relying on that Lightning Bolt and that Qasali Pride Mage. However, I figure that he can still block here, and that's no big deal. It's not going to stop anything. But by putting out Pride Mage, especially because Bonfire only hits his creatures, not my creatures, it allows me that if I draw a land next turn, I could Bonfire, hit his Spellskite, or hit Bonfire, hit his Spellskite, and then bolt his Spellskite, leaving Qasali Pride Mage open to deal with his Evolutionary Leap or Crowdstone Curo, which are those his sort of combo cards. So I'd rather deal with the Lightning Bolt onto the Spellskite rather than the Qasali Pride Mage onto the Spellskite, if that's understood. It's weird, but it's that's what my goal is here. And you could reliably decide to kill off the Pride Mage to blow up the Spellskite, but I wouldn't want to do that because I'd want an attacker for a little bit if humanly possible. I want to keep it on board because it'll allow me to attack for 4 with it still. My Exalted Trigger. So that's the reasoning I wanted to keep that alive for a little bit longer, especially if I draw an extra mana or something. That's my reasoning for using this instead of going for the Bonfire. I didn't want to hit just 2 creatures. I really wanted to hit 3, and I took some time to evaluate whether or not I thought he could combo off, and I decided he could not combo off, and even if he did just like for 2 cards, then next turn I'll probably hit 4 cards instead, which would be totally worth it. Also, not to mention, Qasali Pride Mage attacks for 4, and Spellskite would have to block that if he was going to choose to block it and die. So, I mean, it was all good options for me. So, let's go ahead and just keep playing. So I end up passing the turn. I know it's not going to do anything. In retrospect, I probably should have tapped my Noble Hierarch and put out my Qasali Pride Mage and left my Bolt mana open in case I needed to intervene, but with his Spellskite, it wasn't going to do anything. The most that Bolt was going to do is make him lose 2 life. But it would have been better because I would have had the Bolt option in case he sacrificed the Spellskite to something that I can still Bolt it. And also, I could still blow up Spellskite with Qasali Pride Mage if I need to. Just recognizing that I made a mistake there real quick. But he ends up not doing anything, so we see that he's a little tight on mana. But he does his best to put in the Cloudstone Kuro, which is going to be annoying for my Qasali Pride Mage. It's going to have to blow that up, and I'm well aware of that. So I'm going to need to do some stuff. I don't end up drawing the mana, which kind of stinky poo-poo for me. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll block with the Spellskite, but he totally doesn't block with the Spellskite. If I really wanted to get cute, I would have, I wouldn't have worked if I attacked with this. But I decided that his Cloudstone Kuro is not going to do very much with two cards in hand if I just go for the Bonfire here. So I go for the Bonfire and blow up his stuff. I figure next turn he's going to have to start blocking with the Pride Mage. And even if he doesn't, maybe I draw a land. I can go ahead and collect the company into something important. But I know that this is going to do quite a bit already. He ends up putting out another Spellskite, which now my idea of blowing up something is a lot less realistic. But with the Dramaka's Command in my hand, I figure if he decides to block with the Spellskite, I can make this Qasali Pride Mage fight, and then do something like, I don't know, prevent damage, because I don't want to put the 1/1 counter on the Spellskite if I can help it. And if he doesn't, I can also still blow up stuff. Like, the cool thing about the Dramaka's Command is it makes them sacrifice an enchantment, so I can still be like, gotcha, to his enchantment, and then use the fight ability to blow up the Spellskite, at least one of the Spellskites, and then hopefully maybe with another attack he blocks with the other Spellskite, or I somehow bolt it in something else, and then I can get the Cloudstone Kuro to ensure victory. But right now my best option is just simply to attack, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. And I hope he blocks, but he doesn't. So I go, alright, better use my mana most effectively. I'm going to go ahead and put down my 2 creatures out. I know that this Dramaka's Command is not going to do anything right now. It's not worth playing, so I'm going to go ahead and put down my Scavenging Ooze. At worst, next turn, I can make my Scavenging Ooze eat his graveyard and swing for a lot of damage, 2 and 3 and 2, 3, 4, 5. Or even still have Bolt mana open for things. So I'm very much sure that I'm going to be able to do something with that. So that's Elves in a nutshell. You really want to make sure you kill their key combo creatures, which even though I didn't do this game or last game, keeping them, I evaluated and I decided their mana dorks were more important and it would slow them down with my aggressive hand that I had. The second game around, I knew that I had cards that would let him combo off and force him to play around it, while Qasali Pride Mage being MVP during this because it allowed me to attack through. Now, Qasali Pride Mage is not always a good card against Elves. It's just this particular one using their engine, it was. Let's go over some cards that are good against Elves, and I'm just going to go over my wide library of zoo cards. Not all these cards are good, and not all of these cards are zoo cards, so please excuse them. I'm going to go ahead and unsort my, my versions too, make it a little bit easier on the eyes. Okay, so what cards are good against Elves? Let's just quickly run through. So this is all right against Elves, especially against the the elves that run things like like you saw, evolutionary leap and Cloudstone Curo. But aside from that, like I said, it's not super great to run against them. Slaughter Pact can get you, especially if you're running Domain Zoo. It can be like a gotcha if they don't have an answer to it right away. Grafdigger's Cage works very well if they're running things that allow them to nab cards off the top. Tooth and Nail, for example, they might do something like Collected Company is the more realistic one. So Grafdigger's Cage can do some stuff. Pithing Needle allows you to do some very cool things against elves. It shuts off a couple of the elves' mana abilities, so it's worth mentioning that it exists, even though it's not super great. Chain to the Rocks is, as always, another removal spell, so it's worth mentioning. Again, Path to Exiles if you're not using all four. Shame on you. But if you're not using all four, you can use it to like more removal for that, the better. Let's talk about if you're playing blue, what should you be playing against them? Swansong doesn't do a ton, but it stops things like we saw with the Collected Company or the Evolutionary Leap, so it'll stop stuff like that. Stubborn Denial will also do that, as well. Spell Pierce. These guys are just your general Zeus sort of like blue tempo counter spells. Duress doesn't do a ton. Thoughtseize does do a ton, which I don't have on here, as well as Inquisition of Kozilek, which I also don't have on here. Let's go back to the more on-color stuff, though, for Zoo. Forked Bolt do a lot for you. Forked Bolt is used a lot during the Delver meta, and it's just hidden tech that it exists. It feeds Goyf, which is pretty good, but it also will allow you to, for 1 mana, maybe kill off 2 elves. One of your more powerful cards that you can bring in is Grim Lavamancer, or have that in the main deck. Grim Lavamancer will do a crap ton against them. It's just repeatable removal over and over and over again until they die and slowly hate themselves for everything. Pillar Flame's usually there for voice or Finks, which has gone down since there's less Melorpod, but it's an option. Rending Volley, again, is another option that you could bring in if they have some form of white creature, which some elves sometimes they run that are green and white. Overall, it's not a good card. Let me just make that clear. Let's see what else we have. I'm just going over every single option. Now, bear in mind, the only good option I really presented so far was Forked Bolt and Grim Lavamancer. Let's see what else we have. Fog is funny if you decide to do that. Vines of Vastwood's not super great against them. Torpor Orb can stop things a little bit. Cloudstone Curo, I think. Here's a good one to bring in, and this is a little known tech that people do. Most people consider this good for Storm, but it's actually really good for Elves too. Elves accomplishes themselves by casting 1,000,000 creatures in 1 turn. Aethersworn Canonist does not let them do that. That's important to have. Your Thalias are going to be generally worthless during this time. Ooh, I Ration Field. I buy tickets sometimes on Magic Online. Unified Will actually do good against them. You can counter a creature spell, depending on what the creature spell is, if you control more creatures than that opponent's controller. So this would be really only if you're on the play. You don't really want to do this on the draw, because they'll probably have more creatures than you at this point. Arc Trail is another one that you could bring in. Arc Trail is not really used in anything but Gruul Zoo, but you could bring it in, and it does what it needs to do against them. Let's see what else there is. Pyroclasm's huge. Pyroclasm's great. Pyroclasm is a very good card to use there. Unlike the other ones I was talking about, Pyroclasm is very good. Eidolon the Great Revel, if you're running it in your sideboard, sometimes I do that against, like, if I know if I'm going a Storm meta, this guy will be in my sideboard. He is awesome against Elves. Searing Blaze, Searing Blood, also very good. Like I said, any form of removal is good against them, so don't be afraid to use it. Let's see what else we got here. Rakdos Charm, actually very good. You can instant speed get them when they put out 1,000,000 creatures, you know? And be like, nope, you lose the game. Yay. Destructive Revelry, again, that's for stuff like, when they do that. Deflecting Palm is a good choice sometimes if they're not using Emrakul as their go-to thing, because you can stop a Crater Hoof Behemoth and destroy them with it. However, the problem with Crater Hoof Behemoth is it stops a lot of other stuff. Get a tag stops, simply put, stops the collect a company. As such, Aven Mind Sensor would. We talked about Hushwing Griffin being Torpor Bird, so Torpor Orb on Torpor Board. Elon of the Rhetoric also stops them in a similar vein. Blood Moon doesn't really do anything. Volcanic Fallout is awesome. It's great against them. It's a little slow against them. It's not quite as good as Pyroclasm, but it's good. It's good. You can use instant speed for like more gotchas, you know. So that's worth mentioning. I'm trying to see what else there is. There's not a ton to bring in against Elves. You're actually pretty alright if you have enough removal in your deck. Dominated again also is just extra removal you can bring in. Fiery Justice, more removal that you can bring in. Crackling Doom is more removal you can bring in. Mardu Charm, more removal you can bring in. I know that you guys are all like, we get it, removal's good. Rod of Ruin is not good ever. Don't you ever use it. Now we're getting to 4 mana. There's not too much to point out here. Things like a Johnny Virgin is all right against them. You're getting to 4 mana, which is dangerous territory. It's hard to win after 4 mana. I'm trying to see if there's just anything else. Bonfire of the Damned, like I pointed out. And that's pretty much it to talk about for them. Dramalka's Command also. I forgot about that guy. Dramalka's Command also, because it's just extra removal. And what I brought in specifically against them with this deck was the 2 Dramalka's Command, 1 Banefire, or one Bonfire of the Damned, and 1 Aethersworn Canonist. So that was my deck. I've been talking for 30 minutes now. I hope that is a pretty good overview as to how to beat Elves. I will again be putting more matchup videos online if I run into just good players and or even just a good game of Magic. And then talk about the matchup and how you can win based on it. If I can't get a good matchup or I just narrowly lose, I'll still do that too. But is the final question, is Elves a good matchup for Zoo? If they fumble, yes, but against any deck, if they fumble against Zoo, we probably win. It's not a good matchup, simply because of the combo aspect to it, but if you have enough of your removal spells, that you've drawn enough of them over time, then it is a good matchup. And after sideboard, if you are properly prepared for more removal, again, I've got at least 3 removal spells in my sideboard. Could have more if I really wanted to push it. Then yes, it turns into a good matchup. Really depends on your sideboard. Depends on how much removal you have. Removal is a key way of interacting with them. Thank you, everybody, and once again, remember to feed those animals. They get hungry. Thanks, guys.